Hey, what's going on, y'all? We are back with another episode of the Change What We Normalize podcast. Look, if you're listening to this right now, make sure that you share it, send it to a friend, send it to somebody you love. To all of my loyal supporters, I truly, truly appreciate you for tapping in and really rocking with me on season two. Season two has been incredible, man. Just having the opportunity to have these guests. We've had some incredibly powerful people, and today's guest is no different. I'll be honest. This is a little selfish of me because I did season two with the guests, so I can actually just listen and learn. I'm be honest, because the first season I did 30 episodes by myself. I was knocking them out, and I could have kept going, but I really wanted to gather other people on here so I can just listen and learn. So selfishly, you know, I did season two with guests just so I can do that. So I'm really excited about this next guest, man. He's a brother of mine. He's incredible. He's a counselor, researcher, parent coach, motivational speaker. I met him a little bit ago, and we just bonded quickly, man. He's doing incredible things over on the West Coast. So coming up next on the Change What We Normalize podcast is my brother, my guy, DJ Johnson. Hey, what's going on, bro? How you doing?
I'm great, man. First and foremost, I am excited to be on your podcast. You know, when people have podcasts and you're a fan of their podcast and you're close to them, but you're
Right.
like, I ain't gonna be like, yo, can I get on the podcast? So when you finally reached out to me, I was like, okay, let's go. We in there.
Nah, man. I really wanted you on a while ago, and I'm just trying to plan it strategically. I'm like, yo, I got to get him on at this time, and we had our schedules weren't aligning at first, and then I had some issues with my stuff, and I'm just glad that we're able to make it happen, man. This is something that's been in the works for quite some time, man. So I'm excited for my audience to really just hear you out, hear your story, and gain some insight from you, man. Because from the short time that we've known each other, you've blessed me, with your wisdom, but then also just as a brother, right? You know what I'm saying? We haven't even literally met in person, but it's like as a brother, you've blessed me in a sense where you'll just call, like, yo, you good? Like, and we have those conversations. And I think that that is extremely powerful, man. So for the people who don't know DJ Johnson, hold on. First, DeAntwann, that's actually your first name.
That's my government name. Yes.
Does anybody call you DeAntwann?
That's so funny. Even my wife, I don't even think calls me DeAntwann. I'm. There's a few I could count on one hand. I think the people who actually call me DeAntwann. But for those out there, my name is DeAntwann Dytrell Johnson.
Wow, I did not know that. Wow.
So DJ. That's why I go by DJ.
Right. Let's rock with DJ. But no, that's funny because nobody really calls me Nathan. I think there's two people. I think my aunt is one of my aunts, and from time to time, my mom will say Nathan. And that might be if she's like upset or something, but she'll say Nathan. Yeah. But outside of that, everybody just called me Nate. So I roll with Nate like it's on everything. And some people call me Nathaniel. And I'm like, yeah, that's not my name. That's not on my birth certificate, fam. It's I thought it was short for no. It's just Nathan. That's it. But yeah, man, let's jump into this. So for the people who don't know, DJ Johnson and the amazing things that you're doing, I want to give a little backstory about that. Because something that I love, something that I truly believe, and I say this everywhere I go, every single episode, is that your story is about you, but it's not for you. So I love to just go deep dive right into your story, right into your background as we build up and really learn more about you and what you're doing with parents, which is incredible. I can't wait till they hear about that.
Yeah, so I grew up in Indiana, and I had a childhood that in a moment seemed normal, right? Change what you normalize. Like what was normal for me in my home was a mother who was subjected to an abusive husband, who was my stepdad. And that kind of spiraled into, a situation where, my brother, when I was in the third grade, was playing around upstairs with a lighter, I believe it was, and
Mm.
fast forward, ended up burning our apartment down. And
Oh.
that moment changed the course of my life. That summer, actually. So he ended up doing that in the beginning of the summer in the third grade. And that summer we immediately went into, like, I think the American Red Cross put us up in a hotel for like a week or so. And then it turned out we weren't going to be able to go back to our apartment. So ended up staying in a motel for like another month or so in the next
Mm.
town over. And so, yeah, we legit that summer went from being homeless to my stepdad, going to jail when he would go to jail often throughout my childhood. And so that particular time he went to jail. And so my mom was trying to figure it out, fend for herself, and finally was able to kind of get on her feet and find like a 2-bedroom house to rent. But while she was, trying to make ends meet, how she was making ends meet was by stripping and exotic
Mm.
dancing. And so by her doing what she had to do to try to take care of us, it was me and my 4 other siblings, 5 total. She got into some activities that caused her to get into drugs and do, different things that ultimately, I think within the next, it must have been like 4 or 5 months, she ended up coming to me one night and just letting me know that she wasn't going to be able to take care of us anymore, and that we were
Mm.
going to have to stay with, at the time it was my grandmother. And I didn't, in the moment, I didn't realize the magnitude of that conversation. In that moment I always thought that she was going to, get herself together and get us back. But after that conversation, we did end up going to stay with my grandmother, which ultimately was us going into the foster care system. And she never had an opportunity to get us back. We would go to court. We would have all these different, I would call it double dutch. Like one moment she might get us, the next moment she might not. We just kept going back and forth with her, with the courts and everything. But the reality is I ended up being in a foster care system until I aged out at 18. And so that, using that story, I think for a long portion of my life, I didn't feel the need to share that type of information with people. I didn't feel like my story was for anybody but myself. And there were some things that happened to me in my early 20s that really kind of smacked me in the face and helped me realize that my story is not really for me. And I think with all the trauma, what's crazy, you hear people say, "Oh, you were in a foster care system." They feel like it's a bad thing, and for the most part, it might be. But for me, my life was so traumatic before I got into foster care, that foster care essentially ended up changing the course of my life, what seemed like for the better. And so, yeah, as I got older and not necessarily not going into therapy or anything until within the last 3 years or so, I did a lot of, well, I healed in some ways, but for the most part, I stuffed and I didn't share and I didn't allow myself to be open, and I suffered silently. My relationships weren't as good as they could have been. I, was always stiff arming or Heisman my family members because y'all, I would blame them for a lot of the things that happened to me in my childhood, or I would blame them for a lot of the things that I was struggling with as an adult. And I finally had a moment. I was my freshman year in college. I was out in California. I moved my senior year. Right before my senior year, I moved to California with my auntie out here. And I graduated from high school and I was in college freshman year, driving my own car, had my own job. And so at that point, I really felt like, no, I don't need no family. I don't need nobody like on me, telling me what to do, trying to boss me around, all this stuff. Right. So me and my auntie got into it, black aunties, they don't play.
Right,
And
right.
so we got into it. And man, I was so hot headed that I was like, all right, I'm gonna leave your house then. I'm out. I'm gonna find somewhere to live. And my solution was to move with my best friend who lived in Florida at the time. And I was gonna go all the way across. So I was at least smart enough to finish my semester. So I did that. And then I booked a one-way flight to Florida and went and stayed with my homie for a couple of months. And then while I was there, even though my situation changed, my attitude didn't. And my attitude towards people telling me what to do, or basically what I deemed it as is having this lack of control over my life for so many years. And so I was so out of control of my life for so many years in my childhood that when I became an adult and I could be in control of it, I was overcompensating. And so when I got
Mm.
to Florida, I got into it with my auntie over a control issue. And then when I got to Florida, I was living with my homeboy and his cousin, and we had our own place there. And I had 2 jobs, and I was doing the dang thing. At least I thought I was. But his dad would come over and would like invade our privacy and yell at us and curse. And he would drink, and that was a big trigger for me. And so one day he came through, super upset at me, frustrated. I just called him out. I was like, yo, why you always coming over here? Like, we grown. Like, you don't have to be on us like this. Like, I was just talking to him in that way. And he was drunk and he wasn't trying to hear it. He thought I was talking back to him or whatever it might be. And he got so mad, he picked up the thing that was next to him, which was a steel chair, and threw it in my direction.
Wow.
Hit me in my head.
Wow.
And I was like, when I tell you I was mad, Nate, like, like horns, red, upset, right? And I remember in that moment, Nate, thinking like, all right, you got 2 options. You can knock him out, right? But the thing about that is he is so drunk and you're so mad right now that you might end up in jail.
Oh, so you might kill him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that's what I was literally processing in my head. And so then while I'm having that process, he's like, okay, let's say you follow through with that. What family member do you have here? Because you alienated yourself from your family. You moved all the way across the country. You moved to a city where you have no family members here. Who's going to come let you out of jail? Your friend now, you just hurt his dad. If it came down to it, right? You just killed his dad. If it came down to it, you live with his cousin. Like they go, you know what I mean? Like all these things is like processing in my head. And the other thing was like, you could just walk out and call somebody that you care about the most. And thankfully, the angel on my shoulder convinced me to walk out.
Praise God.
And I was hot. I was so mad. I was so mad. I called my grandma. Because my grandma made me promise. My great grandma, she was in California, and she was mad that I came to Florida. She was like, I don't know why you did that, but she was like, you make sure you call me every week, right? And so I call her. And I just talked to her, and I was mad because I was cursing at my grandma. Yeah, not at her, but
yeah.
On the phone,
Yeah,
so I was hot, and she knew it, right?
Hot.
And she calmed me down, and she was like, "Baby, stop running." And I was like, "Oh." Like maybe I was a little too mad in a moment to really understand, but like now I'm reflecting back, and I'm like, she said, "You keep running from your issues and your problems, and you haven't faced them head on. Like just stop running, because no matter where you go, it's gonna follow you. No matter where, like you gotta deal with it." And so after that conversation with my grandma, I literally went into like, all right, I'm over this. Let me do what I need to do. I need to get back to California so I can recalibrate and reset. And literally, I would say 2 weeks after that, I was gone, moved back to Cali. I couldn't go back to the college that I had started at, but I ended up going to a JC, Long Beach City College. The coach was actually recruiting me out of high school because I ran track. And he heard that I was back and called me and said, "Hey, come run for me." And I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. And that experience, in the moment, I didn't realize how impactful it was, but that experience helped me come back and just really look at myself and say, okay, yes, you had a traumatic life, DJ. Yes, your life was so traumatic that there's a study called the adverse childhood experience, and they say that if you have a 6 or higher on that, the ACE score, if you have a 6 or higher on that ACE score, your lifespan could potentially be shortened by 20 years. And somehow, some way, your life was so traumatic that you got a score of 10 on there. But what are you going to do about how do you move forward? What responsibility are you going to take in your own healing from that trauma, from those things that you felt like was up against you? And I just asked myself those hard, tough questions. And I got into like expressing myself through poetry and going to open mics and hosting open mics at one point. And it just really allowed me to get to a space where I can, one, hone my voice and be able to share all these different things that I was holding in for so many years. And I believe going through that open mic process and the poetry and all that really led to me becoming the speaker and working with the students at the level that I get to. So that is like a short version of my life, but hopefully I painted the picture of who I
No,
am today.
you definitely painted the picture, bro. And I
Yeah.
knew it was a reason why we connected in a way, because the same way you said you started going to the open mics, like you found this outlet in art.
Yeah.
I'm the same exact way, bro. So I have like poetry everywhere, and I have a special place in my heart for like, poetry slams, open mic, spoken word places. Like I have a special place in my heart. So I love going to them all the time. And it's just a powerful way to express yourself. Like in my very first book, it's funny because I was just signing books today to drop off at a local high school. In my book, Building Muscle, Life is Your Trainer, I actually have a poem in the book that speaks about suicide. When I was going through like a really dark time, I had wrote a poem during that time that really helped me to release the pain and things that I was going through. And I put that in the book. So as you were talking about that, I'm like, man, wow, I didn't realize that, about your story, because mine's is similar in that aspect. And I believe, like you said, that's what almost led you to the realm of like speaking and sharing your message and the power of words in your story, which is incredible, man, for you to have, gone through all of that, but end up where you are. It makes you so powerful and relevant in the space, that you're in, which is extremely powerful, man. And I want to commend you what you're doing now, because the work that you're doing is incredible, and it's so needed, especially with the parents. So I'm here in Jersey, you're over there, but I'm sure the parent situations are very similar, where our parents aren't showing up for the kids in a sense. So I remember going to one school out here, talking to the principals, and he's like, "Yeah, we didn't have one parent show up to the PTA meetings." And I'm just like, wait, what? Like one out of the entire school, like 4 grade levels? He's like, no, we didn't have one. And I'm like, yo, what is going on? But you've decided to target the parents specifically. Why?
So I started I've been working with students since 2009. I started at the after school program with like elementary age students, so 4th and 5th mostly, and kind of transitioned and morphed into working with college students in 2013, I believe I started that. And then in 2014, I started working with high school students. And that really was the shift for me, because, I was working with these high school students, and a lot of times I would have some awesome breakthroughs. And then a lot of times you would have a breakthrough with a student, and then they go back to the home and be subjected to the same things that had them, require a breakthrough in the first place. Let's just say that. And so, the more I started working with these students, the more I was like, it was almost like I was doing work and banging my head against the wall, because I would speak life into these students and give them choices and let them know how much, control they have over where their life can go. And then they would go home and, I've had female students say that their mothers call them the B word. I've had, students, multiple boys or male students, I should say, tell me, my dad is present, but he's not present, and so it was consistent messages like that. And I was just like, yo, like I enjoy working with students. And I'm still asking myself this question: do I enjoy working with students more? Do I enjoy working with parents more? But the reality is I ultimately felt obligated to work with parents on the basis of, originally I didn't have a son, but it was on the basis of, look, I work with your teen students. What I'm telling you is strictly what I've calibrated and got from them all these years talking to them. Like, these are the things that are going to help you reach them, because you guys are most likely, parents have adopted a old school method, is what I talk about. And the old school method is built on control and coercion and all these different things. And the reality is, if you want healthy, successful kids, you got to release that control, and you got to not be in a space where you want to control your kid, as opposed to help them gain that self-control for themselves. So for me, yes.
Can I fold the buckets and can I wash my car?
Yes.
I love it.
All right. Thank you, buddy.
I love it.
So So yeah, just like being in a space where I was working with these students, I've like just felt obligated to say, all right, let me have conversations with these parents as much as I can so I can help them realize the error of their ways and help them, at least with what I've learned working with the students myself and just having these conversations with them. Let me at least help them better communicate and be in a position to really move their kid in a direction that they ultimately want to go. And a lot of it with these parents is that mindset.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
as you were talking, I thought about, because even though I do these parenting groups and I contract and have these I'm preparing a workshop that I'm doing Thursday virtually for the school that I work with. Even though I'm doing it, like a lot of times we got like 4, 5, 6 parents that might show up to these things in a school where you got 2,000 kids. And
Wow.
so, but the discipline office is going crazy, and there's a lot of students in and out of there, and you just wonder, like, and parents are frustrated, they're like, how can I get my kid to do this and do that? And it's like, yo, like there's resources available to help you. And I often beat my head against the wall on that fact of like, yo, y'all not even showing up. But it's hard for you to show up for your kid when you don't consistently show up for yourself as a parent. And I think a lot of parents don't
That's bar.
acknowledge
Sheesh.
or realize
Sheesh.
that, or don't even want to come to the realization that they need to. And so that speaks to what we're seeing across the country, apparently, of like parents are not showing up because I feel like they haven't had the opportunity to show up for themselves.
Right, right. And that's heavy. And I've noticed that as well. So I guess my thing is this: where do we start? Because you're getting momentum out there. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's going to be a greater impact as time continues. But
Yeah.
where did you start with that to even get those? Like you said, it's 4 or 6. It might be 10
Yeah.
one day, 20. It's like,
Yeah.
how'd you even start to get that?
I when for me, it helps collaborating with the schools, and just they typically have a following already of parents that might be into it, and so you'll have some that are like, oh, this sounds interesting, let me show up. And so I'll do this. I will credit the schools that I work with to get the parents to my initial session, and then I will take credit for just keeping them and having that I have some parents who have gone through like groups and workshops with me like multiple times. Like, you've seen
Wow.
this, you've heard this content already, and they're like, no, like we still want to be a part of it, we still want more. And so I'll speak to how I'm able to get that, that retention rate, right? So for me, I know if you follow my page, DJ Inspires Parenting, it would seem like I tend to smack parents across the face with reality. I think that's just me on social media. But the reality is, when I actually work with parents, for me, I'm just down to earth and I'm real. And matter of fact, with some of the things that I want them to understand. But at the end of the day, I just have a heart for helping parents get it, helping parents better understand their children, helping parents like be in a position to say, okay, I thought this was a challenging thing before, but you've helped me shift my mindset to help me understand what this really is. And honestly, I think when parents are having struggles or challenges, a lot of it is because they haven't done the work on their own inner child. And so, like,
There we
I
go.
will.
There we
So
go.
for when we think of parenting, I have the way that I set my parenting up. A lot of let's say a school advertises a parenting course, and so a parent might be like, okay, great, they're gonna help me control my kid. Like, that's typically what I think parents think about when they think about a parenting class. And so I tell them like, okay, hey, welcome to the class or group. I don't like to call it a class. That's the other thing. Like, I make it participatory. So like, even though I'm the person running this group, you guys are parents. You're experts in some form or fashion, and I want to hear from you, and I want to hear your
Right.
insight, and I want to hear how you are able to do certain things with their kid that I didn't even talk about. Like, and so they feel like, oh, I'm not here to just get, I can also give in a part of this
Right.
group. And so I just make it more like, hey, I I make it so known in the first session, like, this is not a class, not a class. You guys are teaching me just as much as I'm teaching you. And so it's a collaborative effort, and I'll explain. We had a group recently, and my one of the parents is, she tough and strict and type A. And so I knew it wasn't going to be enough for me to share and give insight, but I really was able to pass the baton or ask some parents like, hey, you dealt with this situation, you want to speak on it a little bit? And so I let the other parents just kind of speak on it, even though they didn't come into it to be an expert or share their experiences, but I just encourage that, and I uplift them, and just give them that voice that maybe they don't even have in their work situation, or maybe they don't even have in their home. I work with a lot of moms. I don't have too many dads that come to my groups, and so all these different factors are just giving them a voice, letting them feel heard, letting them feel seen. Hey, I say, look, man, parenting is hard. I get it. Like, I just validate where they are, and they just keep coming back. And it's one of those things, the saying, like, it's how you made them feel. And I just make them feel valued. I make them feel important. I make them feel like you have the most important job in the world. So let's do it the best way that we can. So I think that's kind of the mantra that I've gone into it. And thankfully it's helped me a lot, with the parents that I get to serve.
Nice. Was there ever, like, as I'm listening, and yourself as a parent, was there ever, I guess, like, doubt crept in? Because like you said, you had your background of going through foster systems and things like that. And I truly believe that it's hard for us to teach what we haven't had exemplified for us.
That's good.
You know what I'm saying? But you're coming in and you're really adding value to these parents. So it sounds like, in a sense, it almost helped you going through all of that different stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it kind of gave you an advantage almost.
Yeah. No, that's it. In the beginning, especially when I didn't, I went into working with parents before I had my son, and, I have at least one parent, like, you don't have no kids, you don't understand, but like, for me, I work with students, teenagers, seeing it from a different perspective, not like a jaded lens that we tend to have as parents. And then the other aspect of, based off my childhood, I can pretty much tell you what doesn't work. I can pretty much tell you what's not good. And so when I had those two, I kind of combined. And then when I had my son, it just kind of amplified of like, oh, I see some things that maybe they were trying to mention or help me, to understand. And that, when my son was born, is when I realized, oh, I need therapy. I need to really work on some of that inner child and some of those different things that are coming up for me, even to this day, even having gone through a couple of years of therapy. And so those are the ways that in the beginning I was like, okay, I could do this. I'm pep talking myself, using that to my advantage. And now, after working with all these parents all these years, being a dad now, like, I've like leveled up in how I can help parents now because of those different experiences.
Right. Do you feel like it's made you a better parent, like a better father, like going through those experiences and having those conversations with different parents, and also being with the students? Do you feel like there's some things you like pulled out of it that you're able to implement now to ensure that your son has, a father there that truly loves him and that is providing him with real value?
Yeah, I get so excited thinking about it. But like, yeah, with the students, you see what a lot of them don't receive at home, and it leads to some of the behaviors that they tend to get in trouble for at school. And you see on the other end what it looks like when a parent is wholly involved in loving their kid, not conditionally, right? Because we have a conversation like that a lot with parents. Is like, we just have to be careful that we're not loving our kid conditionally, right? Like, I'm only going to love you when you do everything you're supposed to do. I'm only going to love you when you have good grades. I'm only going to love you when you listen to everything that I have to say. And it's just like, no, I need you to love me no matter what. Love me. When I use my son example, like, love me when I poop in my pants on accident. Love me when I yell and scream at Target when you said I couldn't have a toy. Like, love me in those situations. Don't just love me when I'm doing good. And the other part of why love working with parents is, for whatever reason, they have a hard time like seeing what their actions now, how it will impact their kids in the future. And because of my childhood, I'm able to be like, yo, I'm gonna tell you what it looks like when you're yelling at your kid all the time and pointing their flaws out all the time. They become an adult who has imposter syndrome and feel like they never deserve anything that they worked for, or they feel like the work that they put in is never good enough because they're always being nitpicked, or they're always, or at least in their childhood, they were always being nitpicked and said, "Oh, this is enough," or always pointing out, your kid's flaws. Like, we don't take a look at how our actions now impact our kid in the future. And so that part has really helped me with my son, because I'm like, I need to be super intentional. Even when I had those moments where I want to get frustrated or I want to yell at him or whatever it might be, I have to remind myself, how is this going to impact my man in 5 to 10 years? How is this going to impact him when he become an adult? And people will be like, oh, he's 4, he's resilient. Like, yeah, kids are resilient. But that doesn't mean we as adults need to be jerks about it. That don't mean we as adults have to take advantage of that, right? We want to preserve our kid as much as possible in terms of that innocent, that childlike. Like, I say this a lot, like, I feel like kids are the closest to their purest selves than we ever will be as adults. And life experiences, all these things shift us away from that purity and we become people that are like reserved, or all these different aspects that I think about that shifts us away from what used to be childlike for us. And so how can we preserve our kid and preserve that innocence? And I saw a post today from my girl Leslie from Latinx Parenting, where she was just talking about like how that curiosity, how our kids have an intuition. Some adults in their life, like, they feel uncomfortable for a reason. And we force our kids to make sure you say hello, make sure you speak to, all the adults that speak to you. And it's like, this is how we breed certain issues that we have in our society. We just have to be able to help our kids hone that curiosity, hone their intuition. And the reality is, Nate, especially in the Black and brown communities, what I'm seeing is we have a lot of adults who haven't had experience in any of that. And so it's been hard to offer that to our kids.
Yeah, no, that's the truth. That's the truth, because they haven't been exposed to it, man. But it takes, what I hear, the underlying like message of what you're saying is like being intentional.
Yeah.
Like literally being intentional about everything you're doing, especially as it pertains to yourself and your child. Like you say these certain things. Oh, he's 4, he's 5, he doesn't. But it's like, the reality is, I know my trauma stemmed from like childhood stuff.
Yep. Same.
And they rose up as an adult, and I was like, whoa, what is this? And you don't realize you never addressed that thing that happened when you were 7 years old. You're just like, wait a minute. And next thing you know, you're in therapy. But it's like, we can put preventative measures in now by really pouring into them with the right things. And I love what you said about kids are the closest to, like our pure selves. I heard once, and I hope I don't butcher the quote, but it's like, life is about becoming less of the world and like more of who you are. So it's like, we're as we grow and we advance in age, it's like we're shedding and we're coming more of our pure selves if we're intentional about that. But I love how kids are at that purest level. And I also heard once that kids are great listeners, but they're poor interpreters. You know what I'm saying? For me, I personally remember things that happened, with my parents and with people within my community. I can personally remember things that traumatized me. You know what I'm saying? But at the time, I didn't have the language to express how I was feeling. I didn't have an open door policy. I didn't feel comfortable talking about it. Like, that wasn't the norm in my community, just like it isn't in many other Black and brown communities. You know what I'm saying? Where we don't know how to articulate and communicate. And I feel like that's something that I really want to focus on helping us, helping kids, helping teenagers to really be able to articulate themselves. Because a lot of times when you can't express yourself, it comes out in violence and acting out. Because this has to come out of me, but I don't know how to share it with you. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna start flipping stuff in the classroom. I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that. But it's like, if I can teach you how to use your words, things can change. But that's a whole process, because like you said, we got to work with the parents, educators, students, and it just takes more people like yourself, myself, and really stepping up and in these spaces. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So I want to transition a little bit, because this is powerful. I can talk to you about this stuff all day, because I actually just did it was a parenting, educators, and student event So the stuff you're talking about is so true. But we're going to transition real quick.
I just got a question for you.
Okay, what's your question?
What do you mean we can go outside and we can come back inside?
I think that's a good plan.
That's a solid plan.
Thank you.
That's
We're almost done.
And I love it too. I love it too because he practiced what he preached. Now, if that would have been me back in the day with my dad, I was just thinking in my head. Old school parenting was so different. Like I can picture my mom and my dad now, like get moving. And I'm just like, yo, why you gotta wild out on me? Like, he asked the innocent question, like, hey, you know, he didn't say nothing wrong. He didn't say nothing disrespectful. But it's like that was the way it was, man. And we have to change that. And you know, it's interesting. I kind of want to jump into that, and I'm jumping around this episode, but I want to really jump into that because I asked for your quote earlier, and it was change your narrative, and I want to jump right into that. I usually save it for the end of the episode, but I think this is important because you literally just gave us an example of what that's like within like 10 seconds right there, just talking to your son, and that's just something that, man, it's so true. It can heal and save so many of us from the traumas that we went through. Because like I said, if that was back in the day, if that was me, oh man, it flipped on me. For me asking a question like, hey, I want to be able to
interrupt it.
And it's like, yo, did it warrant all of that? Like for what reason? So as we're on this topic of change your narrative, I want you to go ahead and explain to the audience, the listeners, and if you're watching this on YouTube, shout out to you. What does change your narrative mean? Like, why'd you share that quote with me?
Yeah, so got the shirt on right now. So change your narrative is you are the creator of your story. So when I say change your narrative, when I share that, when I speak to students, it's empowering you to recognize that you have the power to change your story, your narrative. And so if we use the example of my son, who's come and interrupted us a couple of times. And I know adults out there are like, that's preposterous. He shouldn't interrupt you. And it's like, yeah, but I also should have put things into place to make sure that I wouldn't put him in position to interrupt me. Right. Like, so I think what we recognize as parenting, like, I think when we think of the old school way, I always say old school parents parented that fit them, that made them comfortable, that made them feel good about themselves as parents. The reality is to parent in a way that we need to get our kids to not have to heal from their childhood, not feel like they're controlled, be able to be self-sufficient, be able, more importantly, to advocate for themselves and advocate against wrongs. I have to operate and understand that with child development with my son, like he's 4, he's not going to be able to sit down and be quiet for 30 minutes or whatever it might be, how long we've been doing this podcast. So I understand, like, I'm not going to get mad at him for something that's developmentally appropriate. And what you said earlier, a lot of times, because old school parenting, I believe, was to fit the parent and make the parent, feel good about themselves. Like they did a lot. They got mad at us, a lot of the times for developmentally appropriate things, playing too loudly, not having the motor skills to clean up your toys in the way that they wanted them to be cleaned. I just think of all these different things that we used to get in trouble for. And it's just like, at the end of the day, I was just being a kid. And you were punishing me essentially for being a kid.
Wow.
And so when my son comes and asks me a simple question, not even rude about it, he's just, we have empowered him to like, I did encourage, I did have a conversation like, hey, I'm going to do this. If you could be quiet, I really would appreciate it. But I also understand in the back of my mind, he's not going to be quiet forever. He's not going to sit down forever because he's a kid. And that is a motor control, different things that he's going to grow and learn over the years. But like right now, me changing my narrative is understanding that I got to learn certain things about my child and the way that they work. So I'm not being upset about something that I really shouldn't be upset about as a parent.
Right. And what you're not doing is silencing his voice.
Yeah,
because that's happened to a lot of us growing up where our voice was silenced. Yep. So as we became older, teenagers, young adults, we didn't feel like we had a voice because it was always silence. We couldn't get a word out. We couldn't get an explanation. It was because I said so.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It was just like, well, that don't really make sense. It's like, well, because I said so. And just like, what? But that's
Yeah.
how it was, man. And
Yeah.
that's something when I think of changing narrative, that's something that definitely has to change. So
Yeah.
before we close out, I definitely want people to get in touch with you, bro. How can they link up with you? How can they touch with you on social? Go ahead and share those things with us.
Yeah. Instagram, I have my personal page, DJ Inspires All, as well as the parenting page that I run, DJ Inspires Parenting. I also have a Facebook page, which has been very popular lately, up to about
Nice.
4,300 followers now.
Wow.
So yeah,
That's
crazy. It's
lit.
blew up. Yeah, DJ
That's lit.
Inspires Purposeful Parenting Facebook page. And on the parenting pages, which I've been more active on, I just been just sharing my thoughts on parenting, right? And as Nate said, like for me, questioning the things that we do in parenting that just don't make no sense, right?
Mm,
And the different things like stifling our child's voice, one of the things that I questioned recently was we used to tell kids like you should only speak when spoken to, or
right,
don't come
right.
into don't get into
Man.
grown folks conversation, but in the same
Mm.
time we'll get upset at a kid who didn't come in and speak. Like what?
Like, come on, I'm confused. I don't know what to do.
What? Make it make
What do you?
sense.
Yeah, I start talking like Tyrese. Like, what more do you want from me?
So like but we're asking questions, and I think the older generation gets frustrated at us new generation folks is maybe because we have the ability to ask the questions that they didn't have to. And I don't think it has to be like
Mm.
a battle between the new and the old. I don't think it has
Right,
to be
right,
like
right.
like every generation, I believe, is tasked to do it better than a generation before. So like in all honesty, take your flowers, because y'all laid the groundwork for us to do it better than how y'all did it.
I
And
love that.
you should not be mad at us
I
for
love
seeking
that.
better ways to raise up our kids. I think if you're continually getting upset about how the newer generation parents are allowing their kid to say no and have a voice and do it for the most part in a healthy way, that's inner child work that you need to do, because your inner
Right.
child is not happy with seeing kids get validated that you didn't receive in your childhood. But that's a whole nother episode, Nate.
No, I'm definitely bringing you back because that's something I want to hit on, and
Yeah.
that ties into a project that I'm working on that I really want. We're gonna talk about that, but
Oh,
yo,
for
make
sure.
sure that y'all are following him on all of these pages. Oh, also make sure that y'all visit my brother's
Yes,
website,
sir.
man. Especially if you're looking to bring him in for engagements, he's incredible, and just doing amazing work. Like I said, this is just a snippet into the insight of what he's doing and the wisdom. But just some of the things he shared on here, man, have truly blessed me. And that's really how we change things around. So
Yep.
my final question before we close out, and it's very similar to what you have with change, change your narrative is,
Yeah.
what does change what we normalize mean to you?
Since we talked parenting today, I might as well go down that road, and that is, we've normalized raising obedient, listen to everything that I say, do everything that I say kids,
Mm,
without recognizing the repercussions of how that's going to impact them as they become adults. I told you
sheesh.
earlier that I'm really big on helping us acknowledge and see how our actions impact us as adults. Well, if you grew up telling your kid to only speak when spoken to, they might
Mm.
become a high school student who's afraid to even ask their teachers when they're struggling with the class. They're
Whew.
afraid to, if they go to college, go to their professor's office hours because they've been beat to death as their child in terms of words wise, that you should only speak to an adult when spoken to. So it doesn't empower me to go speak to an adult on my own. Or
Mm.
if you've consistently controlled your child and force them to be obedient through punishment or whatever it might be, you might have an adult who struggles to make decisions for themselves and maybe have a hard time saying no, and ultimately becomes a people pleaser. Who knows? If you use punishment as a thing, if you normalize like, well, we need to hit kids and we need to discipline them in
Mm-hmm.
that way and they need to learn, right? If you normalize that, well, you might have an adult who wanted to do the complete opposite of that and just completely became a person who doesn't like conflict and is super uncomfortable with it, and now has issues trying to communicate in his relationship when he doesn't have things that are working for him in his relationship. I'm being transparent and open because all those things happened in my childhood, and all these things I'm working through as an adult at 33 in 2 weeks. Like, this is what we talk about when we normalize these things that ultimately impact us and hinder us in our adulthood. And so changing what we normalize is changing the different things that you as an adult need to be aware of and understand. Like, why isn't my life quite where I want it to be, relationship wise, work wise, career wise, whatever it might be? Ask yourself those tough questions. And then if you just so happen to be a parent, figure out, okay, what is it that I didn't get as a child? What feelings or different things did I not get validated as a child? And how can I put myself in position as a parent to be able to do that for my child?
Wow. Look, if you're listening to this right
You be
now,
gassing me up, man.
nah, seriously, bro, I highly suggest, because I just had this conversation with my boy yesterday. I highly suggest, if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, that you go back, rewatch this, re-listen, grab a notebook and take some notes, because this right here is how generational curses are broken.
Absolutely.
By the things that he's sharing, man. And it's extremely powerful and just so valid. And I'm blessed because I have the opportunity to learn all of this from you and just other people who are around me who have children who are doing incredible things before I ever have a child, So I get married in a week, and then, we plan on having children sometime in the next year or two. I don't know, but it's like, I'm blessed to be around individuals who are doing it, what I believe is right.
Yeah.
And I get to gather all of this to nurture and really pour into a love my child. So I'm extremely grateful, man, for that, and for just having you on, bro. Like, I'm super grateful that we did this. And before we close out, tell us what's next for DJ Johnson. What you got going on, bro? What can we support?
Yes. Yeah, man. I had the craziest couple of days. I know I texted you about this, but got some speaking engagements coming up, so I'm working on that. But one very important, awesome opportunity that I got was I'm actually gonna be a part of a Tedx event.
Hey,
so I did a Tedx
that's
talk
huge.
on parenting by out of all things. So look out for that announcement on my social medias if you follow it, so you can look at or listen to that conversation and check it out.
That's fire, bro.
Yeah.
That's huge, man. That's huge. I'm excited for you, bro. I'm super excited for you, bro.
Super
I get to
blessing,
do
man,
mine.
for
I'm
sure.
doing mine next year, man, on emotional fluency. So I'm
Hey,
super
let's
excited
go.
about that as well, bro. But
Yeah.
look, everybody, I want to thank y'all for tuning in to another episode of the Change Will Be Normalized podcast. This episode has been extremely powerful. My man DJ came through and blessed us, bro. We are extremely grateful, man. Your son came through, blessed us for a perfect, just on the spot teaching moment, bro. He knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
He's a wise man. So we're just extremely grateful over here, man. And we look forward to having you back. Let us know in the comments, everybody, if you want to have DJ back. I definitely want to have him back because there's another conversation that I really want to have with him. So be on the lookout for that. If it's not this season, next season, but I definitely want to get my man back. He's doing incredible work on the West Coast. I'm excited, bro. We have to collaborate on some stuff,
man,
and continue to do the work that you're doing with parents, man. You're literally, changing so many lives, man.
Yes, sir.
By doing that work. It's super, super important. And I don't think we recognize individuals who are doing that type of work enough. So I just want to be the one, to give you your flowers and just, tell you I appreciate you, bro. And I love you and the work that you're doing, man.
Love you too, brother, man. I'm a fan of you and I appreciate all that you do. I cannot wait to either book my flight out to the East Coast or whenever we get a moment to connect. It's going to be glorious. It's going to be like, yo, cousin, I ain't seen you in a minute. That's how it's going to be.
Right. I'm looking forward to that, man.
Yes,
I think we may come out there too, because we're booking up after the wedding. We're booking all of our trips for next year. So we're planning the West Coast trip for sure.
I'll bet.
So I'm definitely keep you in the loop for that, man. But I'm excited, man. I appreciate you, bro. Until next time, y'all, this is the Change What We Normalize podcast. I love y'all. See y'all soon.